I got this TV a while ago that looks like a picture frame, which is pretty cool. But after a few months of cables and boxes on the floor, my wife decided it was time I did something about it. I live in a small apartment and everything is tiny, so I needed something custom, which meant it was time to draw up something that would fit the space. And this is what I came up with. I had some oak boards from an impulse purchase a while back and I hadn't used them for anything, so those should be perfect for this. After measuring and marking, I could get everything ready for cutting. And there was quite a lot of cutting. Despite what the flannel shirt might indicate, I'm no woodworking expert. But I had watched enough YouTube to know that this was the perfect time to make a leg tapering jig, which was simple enough. Apart from the wood splitting. And placing the support on the wrong side, but it was easy to fix. With the jig fixed, I could cut the legs to the right shape. I could have gone with straight legs too, but I thought the taper would distribute the visual weight of the console a bit more, making it look lighter in the room. For whatever reason, the legs were just slightly differently sized, but it gave me a good excuse to break out the handplane, which is always satisfying. Then I could try my best to match the angles of the legs to the cross pieces. This sounds easy, but let's just say that the cross pieces were supposed to be quite a bit thicker. In client builds, we mostly use Biscuits, which is quick and easy and it works great. But my subconsciousness apparently wanted to punish me, so I figured I'd go old school with mortise and tenon joints on the legs. The tenons were easy, we got machines for that. As for the mortises, I dug out some blunt chisels from a tool drawer and clamped the wood in a portable bench vise that works great, as long as you don't apply force to the material. As for blunt chisels and oak, that was exactly as much fun as you'd expect. But I got it done, and despite our neighbor asking if the mortises were chewed by a beaver, I was actually pretty happy with the result. A test fit looked good until I looked closer at the cross pieces, so it was back at it with a handplane. Much better. The original plan was to do mortise and tenon joints everywhere, but my back muscles let me know I had tortured myself enough for one build, and power tools are just so much easier. Here the autofocus apparently couldn't decide if the tripod legs or me marking up the biscuit positions was more interesting. Maybe that's a clue to move on. If you have watched any of my other videos, you know that in our shop we have a complicated relationship with the biscuit joint. This time, to my surprise, it went flawlessly. That is, until I spaced out when deepening one biscuit mortise off camera and cut it too wide. It might be hard to see here, so let me put the box together. Also, you might notice the box is open on both ends. I figured that was good for ventilation, as it would have electronics in it and it would make attaching the doors easier. And honestly, it didn't really need a back anyway, so I left it off. So with the box assembled, here you see clearly the miscut biscuit. It wouldn't be a 2L studio build without one. This is Rattan for the doors. It seemed simple enough in my head, but they also needed a frame. And my business partner Sam was off on another project today, which probably saved me some embarrassment, because this was definitely a learning moment. With the frame cut to width, I started trimming the length. First one by one, before I decided to be clever and stack several. With the frame the right size, it was time for my experiment. The idea was for the rattan to wrap around the frame, so the frame would be invisible from the outside. In my mind, that would look much better than having the rattan sit inside a frame. Once the glue had dried, I snipped off the corners to make the rattan easier to bend. Added some glue and struggled. Somehow I got it done and in the planer press, mostly to stop it from exploding again. With the glue dry, I could inspect my creation and take it apart to salvage the rattan, which I think was actually the most expensive part of this build. The previous frame was best forgotten, so I figured I'd go with half laps on the new one. Cutting it on the table saw is not difficult, but it's definitely time consuming, so I naturally got impatient and tried cutting 8 pieces at once. While nothing exploded on me this time, it did feel a little sketchy, so I moved back to one at a time, but I used a slightly different technique. It was getting pretty late by the time I got everything cut, but I wanted to get it done before calling it a night to make sure no traces of my shame remained. At least the neighbors were having a good time. A little bit of glue later, it was time to head home. This worked out a lot better. There was just a tiny gap in one of the doors, but Sam was back and knew exactly how to make it invisible. Turns out his 25 years of carpentry experience gives you a few tricks that I don't have yet. By the way, we upgraded our workbench halfway through this build. It's a long story, but it made holding the frames much easier so I could put an edge profile on them. I thought it would look weird to glue the rattan right onto the frame, so I decided to cut a rabbet for it to sit in, which was also pretty straightforward with a new table. It just took a bit of careful eyeballing. Luckily, the failed experiment left just enough of the rattan without glue residue to be able to repurpose it, so I cut it to size. Then Sam dug out some construction adhesive that apparently bonds anything to anything. And we glued down one short side. I had never worked with rattan before, but people online said it gets more malleable with hot water. We don't have hot water at the shop, but we do have an espresso machine. So we sprayed it and forced it into the right shape. Then I cut it to exactly the right length. Then we glued it to the frame. And then the camera died. On to the part I was dreading, cutting the grooves in the box itself. Any mistake here would mean I'd have to start over, and I really didn't want to start over. Oak is no walnut, but it's expensive enough, and as this was a build for myself, I was already over budget. But I was all out of excuses and this had already dragged out for too long, so it was time to get it done. I assembled the box and used the doors themselves to measure where the grooves should go, marked it with a wheel marking gauge, then took a deep breath and got to cutting. Luckily my fears were unfounded and finally something worked out well. Time to sand. Honestly, I don't know why I keep filming sanding. It's therapeutic to do, but it's boring to watch, so on to gluing up the box. Gluing this all by myself turned out to be harder than I thought. With no back for support, the box kept drifting out of square, but finally one of us gave up. I like to think it was the box. I needed to speed up, so I asked Sam for help and even dropped the overshirt for increased efficiency. The next day I had to travel and I would be away for a while, and I really wanted the build done before I left. I added a small chamfer on all the edges. And then Sam did the corners with a file. I already mentioned it, but this whole thing is built from oak. And oak tends to go yellow over time, which I don't love, so I finished it with Rubio white to keep it a bit lighter. The beaver-chewed mortises weren't pretty, but they only hold the legs, so no weight is on them. And construction adhesive expands, so it should be fine. It's also for myself, so if it breaks, I know who gets to fix it. The same is true for my car as my apartment. It's small. That's city life for you. But I needed to get this in my car and transport it home, so I decided to attach the legs with screws instead of gluing everything together. The rail system of the new table was handy once more, as we cut the slots for the little tabs that hold the doors. As for the tabs themselves, I forgot to make them. But at home I cut some furniture pads to size and used them instead as a temporary solution. But as we know, there is nothing as permanent as a temporary solution. We used the board to figure out where to install the legs on the box. That way it was easy to ensure the legs didn't extend past the box itself, since that would mean the console wouldn't fit the nook where it was going. 4 holes, some glue and a few threaded inserts later, everything was ready, and the last thing on the list was to create a shelf. I measured the width, ripped the board, and installed threaded inserts off camera. And with that, it was done, after way longer than I'd like to admit. If you don't believe me, just compare my hair now to at the start of the video. Back home, it was just a matter of assembling everything. Cleaning out the cable mess, and installing the piece, which was super satisfying. You never really know if you got the measurements wrong until it's too late, but this time it worked out. After that I could install all the cables and boxes. The furniture pads worked surprisingly well. I'll do it properly at some point, but that's a problem for future me. If you like this video and you want to follow along, you know the buttons to click. And here are the final shots of how it turned out. It's not perfect, but it's mine and it's done. Thank you for watching.